The alien ship landed gently on the green planet. Clouds floated above like soft cotton, and strange trees swayed in the breeze. The planet, named Helera 9, was rich with life. Tall grass covered the land, and colorful insects buzzed in the air. For the aliens from the Ryland species, this place was new and exciting. They were here on a peaceful mission, to study the environment and learn about natural weather on other worlds. Their home planet had no rain, no dirt, and no changing skies. Everything was clean, dry, and smooth. This planet felt wild and full of unknowns. A human named Caleb was with them. He was a survival expert from Earth. The Galactic Council had asked him to help the Rylands stay safe. At first, they didn't take him seriously. The Rylands believed their advanced suits, tools, knowledge made them better than any low-tech human. Why do we need a human? One alien named Zalrin asked on the first day. We've explored 37 planets. We can handle one. With grass and wind, Caleb didn't argue. He had heard it all before. Instead, he walked the land, took notes, and watched the sky carefully. He had a feeling something was coming. By the third day, Caleb noticed the clouds getting darker. The air became heavy, and the wind changed direction. He checked his tools. Pressure was dropping. He knew what it meant. He walked back to the camp and warned them. A storm's coming. Bad one. You need to secure your shelters and pack your gear. Zalrin rolled his eyes. You mean water will fall from the sky? How dangerous can that be? Another alien, a young one named Lyrics, laughed. Our suits are sealed. We will be fine. Caleb sighed. It's not just the water. The wind gets strong. Lightning can strike. The ground turns to mud. Things sink. You have to prepare. The aliens didn't listen. They kept studying plants and collecting samples. Some even stood in the open, curious about the dark clouds. They thought it was just part of the planet's beauty. Then the first drop fell. One alien touched his helmet. What was that? A second drop, then a third, then dozens. Soon, the sky opened. Rain poured down in sheets. The ground changed within minutes. Dry soil turned to thick, sticky mud. Small puddles grew into flowing streams. Tents collapsed. Boxes floated away. The Ryland screamed, It's attacking us. The sky is broken. My tools. There, drowning, Caleb ran through the chaos. His waterproof jacket was soaked, but he didn't stop. He grabbed ropes and started pulling gear out of the water. Shouted, Get to higher ground. Get out of the low areas. But most of the aliens didn't know what to do. Their suits were not made for water. They slipped, fell, and panicked. Some lay in the mud, shaking. Others tried to run, only to fall again. One tent collapsed on top of an alien. Caleb ran over, pulled the cover off, and lifted the alien out. Breathe. You're okay, he said, helping them stand. But more water kept coming. The camp was built in a small dip in the land. Now that dip was turning into a swamp. Caleb looked around and made a quick decision. If the water had no place to go, it would drown the whole camp. He found a shovel and started digging. He chose the edge of the camp and began carving a path. Away from the center, his hands were fast. He didn't wait for help. Every scoop of mud he threw aside was a step toward saving them all. What is he doing? One alien asked, still curled under a broken tent. Digging? Lyric said, her voice shaky. That's a human thing. Caleb didn't hear them. Rain hit his face, but he kept going. The trench was small at first, just a narrow line. Water started to follow it. Yet the more he dug, the more the water moved away from the camp. He looked up and saw more aliens staring. If you want to live, yelled, grab a tool and help me. None moved. Then stay there and hope the water shows mercy, he said, turning back to dig more a few moments later. Lyric stood up. She walked to him, slipped once, but got back up. She grabbed a piece of metal and started digging beside him. Good, Caleb said. Start from that side. We need a full circle around the camp. Lyrics didn't answer. She just followed his lead. The others watched her. One by one, a few more joined. Soon, a small group was helping Caleb. They were wet, cold, and scared, but they had hope now. The storm had come fast and hard. It broke their pride. But Caleb, just one human, was standing strong. It's not with lasers or machines, but with his hands and will. The rain kept falling, but now the water had a path. And for the first time since the storm started, the camp had a chance. The rain kept falling harder. It felt like the sky had opened a river above them. Lightning flashed in the dark clouds, and thunder cracked like a giant's roar. The ground was soaked, and mud swallowed every step. Caleb didn't stop digging. The trench now stretched halfway around the camp, guiding the water away. The flow was slow, but it worked. Still, it wasn't enough. The camp was sinking little by little. Lyrix stood beside him, tired, but still digging. Her smooth hands, not meant for dirt, were now scratched and muddy. Her eyes were full of fear, but she stayed focused. Caleb looked at her and gave a small nod. "You're doing good," he said. She didn't speak, only nodded back. On the other side, a few more Rylands tried to help. They were clumsy, unsure of their steps, but they copied Caleb's movements. They used pieces of metal, plates from broken shelters, even food trays, anything that could scoop mud. Xal Ren, who once mocked the human, now sat inside a soaked tent, watched through the flap as Caleb worked. Water had reached his knees. He didn't understand why the human risked so much for them. "We are not used to this," Zalrin whispered to himself. "This planet, ... it hates us." A loud cry came from the far side of the camp. "Help! Someone's stuck." Caleb dropped his shovel and ran through the rain. 2 aliens were near the edge of a small pit, now filled with water. One had fallen in, and the other couldn't pull him out without thinking. Caleb jumped in. The water was cold and deep. The trapped alien's legs were caught in roots and soft mud. Caleb grabbed his arms and shouted, "Push with your legs!" The alien was panicking, breathing fast. Caleb kicked the roots away and pulled hard. After a few seconds, the alien came free. They both stumbled out of the pit, covered in mud. The other alien cried in relief. "Thank you." He was sinking. Caleb looked around. The water was rising faster than he expected. Called out, "Get to the center of the camp. We'll build a platform. Start stacking anything strong." His voice had changed. It wasn't a request anymore, it was an order. Dota Lyrix stood tall beside him. "Do what he says." She shouted. "He's the only one who knows how to survive this." The aliens listened. They moved crates, broken gear, and parts of the ship. They stacked them into a wide, flat surface, high above the mud. It wasn't perfect, but it gave them a place to stand. Meanwhile, Caleb went back to the trench. He made it wider, deeper. Water rushed through it now, like a small river. He used metal boards to shape the walls so they wouldn't collapse. Every movement cost him strength, but he didn't stop. Some aliens brought torches to help him see. Others held ropes so he wouldn't slip. Together, they formed a line. One scooped, another passed the mud, and a third placed it far away. The teamwork grew stronger with each minute. Xal Ren finally came out of his tent. His suit was soaked. He looked at the trench, then at Caleb. He walked over slowly, unsure. I want to help," he said. Caleb looked at him, surprised. "Grab a tool." Zalrin picked up a shovel and joined the line. The storm was still wild, but the trench now circled the whole camp. Water was moving away. The platform stood firm, and the shelters were no longer floating. Caleb wiped his face. His hands were raw. His body ached, but he smiled. "We might actually make it," he whispered. Lyrix stepped beside him. "You saved us." "Not yet," Caleb replied. "But we bought time." The lightning moved farther away. The thunder became softer. The rain slowed down. Drops still fell, but not like before. The camp was a mess, but it was still standing. Many aliens sat on the platform, shivering but safe. They looked at Caleb not with pity or confusion, but with respect. This human one said, "Dug through the storm while we cried in our shelters." He knew the signs, another added. "He warned us." Zalrin spoke loudly. "We are scientists. We measure stars and energy. but we forgot the ground. We forgot how to live in nature, the human reminded us. Caleb stood quietly. He didn't want praise. He only cared that everyone was alive. YRIX walked up and handed him a warm blanket. Rest now, we'll take the next shift. He nodded and sat down near the trench, watching the water flow. The sky was still dark, but no longer dangerous. The Rylands had learned something important today, not from books or machines, but from one man with a shovel, and the rain was no longer just a storm. It was their first lesson in survival. The rain had slowed, but the sky still looked heavy. Gray clouds moved slowly above the soaked land. The trench dug by Caleb now circled the camp fully, guiding water away like a small river. The center platform, made from stacked crates and ship parts, held the aliens above the mud. They were safe for now. Caleb sat near the trench, his body tired and his hands sore. His fingers were swollen, scratched, and covered in dirt. He didn't care. His eyes stayed on the camp, watching for any signs of danger. LYRX brought him a pouch of clean water. You need to drink, she said softly. Thanks, Caleb replied, taking a slow sip. How's everyone holding up? Some are still scared, but they're starting to understand. They talk less and listen more. He gave a small nod. Good, they'll need that. Storms like this don't just happen once. Behind them, other Rylands worked to fix the broken shelters. They tied ropes between standing poles and stretched fabric to create dry spots. It wasn't perfect, but it was something XAL Ren, once proud and distant, now carried tools and passed them around. He didn't complain. He didn't act like a leader. He followed Caleb's example. Soon more aliens joined the work. They dug small paths to help drain puddles and lifted wet gear to higher ground. Some tried to copy Caleb's digging technique. It was slow, but they were learning. Caleb stood up, ignoring the pain in his legs. We need a better water path, he said. This trench works for now, but the next storm could be worse. We need a second route. Lyrics looked around. There's a small slope on the west side. Maybe we can guide the water that way. Perfect. Grab 5 others and meet me there. They moved fast. Caleb showed them how to dig with the slope. Don't dig straight down. Angle the trench. Give the water a way to move naturally. As they worked, the clouds began to shift. A small patch of sky opened, and light from a distant sun broke through. It was weak, but warm. It touched the camp like a quiet promise. Aliens paused and looked up. One whispered, "Is it over?" Caleb answered, "Not yet. But this is the break we needed." The warmth helped. The mud became a little firmer. The trench water flowed faster. Steam rose from wet surfaces, and the cold that gripped their bodies started to fade. By the time the second trench was done, the camp had changed, not just in shape, but in spirit. The aliens were working together, not as scientists or explorers, but as survivors. Later that evening, a small fire was lit, using dried plant roots and broken ship panels. The flames flickered, and the aliens sat close, their faces tired but calm. XL Ren stood up and cleared his throat. "I want to say something," he began. "When we first arrived, we thought this planet was weak, like a child's playground. We thought a human guide was just a rule we had to follow." He looked at Caleb. "We were wrong." The camp was quiet. This planet almost ended us in a single afternoon, Zalren continued. And one man saved us not with machines, but with hands, knowledge, and heart. He turned to Caleb. "You dug a trench when we didn't even know how to stand in mud. You showed us what real strength looks like." Caleb shifted in his seat. Embarrassed, "I didn't do it alone." "But you started it," Lyrics added, "and we followed." Other aliens nodded. They clapped gently in the way their people showed respect. It was quiet but full of meaning. Caleb looked around the fire. "Listen, this planet isn't evil. It just doesn't care who you are. You either learn to live with it or you don't survive. Storms are normal here. Pain is part of nature. But so is life. So is learning." His words were simple, but they reached deep. The next morning, with the sky mostly clear, the camp looked different. Shelters were rebuilt higher. Gear was sorted. Trenches were reinforced. A new sense of order had taken root. Caleb trained small groups. He showed them how to read clouds, feel wind shifts, and check the smell of the air. He explained why dirt moved the way it did when wet, and how to find higher ground quickly. He taught them how to make fire without tools, how to store clean water, how to use plants for cover. Things they had never studied before. YRIX took notes on a small tablet. She didn't just write down the steps, she recorded the human's thoughts. This knowledge, she said, is more valuable than half our tech. Caleb gave a half smile. Maybe someday your tech will learn to dig trenches too. The aliens laughed softly. As the sun rose higher, the camp stood ready not just for another storm, but for the lessons nature would keep sending. And in the middle of it all stood the man who had once been doubted, now seen as a teacher, a leader, and a quiet hero. The sun finally showed its full face the next day. Warm light touched the wet ground, turning steam into soft mist that floated above the field. Birds and insects returned. Their sounds filled the air again, for the first time since the storm. The planet felt peaceful. Caleb woke early, already checking the trenches. The water levels had dropped overnight, but he wasn't satisfied. He walked the full circle around the camp, fixing weak spots, packing the mud tighter, and pushing out anything that blocked the flow. He worked quietly, lost in thought, until Lyrics walked up behind him. "You don't rest much," she said. "The planet doesn't either." Caleb replied with a tired grin. She smiled, holding a folded cloth. "We found dry towels in one of the sealed crates. Figured you earned one." He took it, wiped the sweat and mud from his neck, and nodded. "Thanks. That's the best gift I've gotten out here." The rest of the camp had changed too. Where panic once ruled, there was now focus. Small groups practiced digging, building, and drying out tools. Zalrin led one group, showing them how to seal the edges of their shelters using methods Caleb taught. The proud alien leader no longer held his head high with ego, but with effort. "Make the base wider," Zalrin told his group. "Alt shifts. When it dries, if it's too narrow, your shelter tips." The aliens listened closely. Caleb noticed them. He stepped closer and watched for a moment. He waited until Zalrin turned. "You're getting good at this," Caleb said. XAL Ren gave a slow nod. "I never thought I'd be proud of mud work." "Earth has a saying," Caleb said. "No work is low if it helps someone stay alive." Zalrin liked that. He repeated it to his group, word for word. Later that morning, a sharp alarm echoed from the ship. The Ryland's weather scanner had detected something new, another storm, forming quickly just beyond the valley. This time no one panicked. Instead, they gathered around Caleb. He pointed at the horizon. "The land there is higher. We need to move the fire pit and essential supplies up that slope. We'll reinforce the second trench and dig short drains between shelters." No one questioned him. Each alien took a task. Lyrics helped draw new plans on her tablet using simple lines that made sense to everyone. The trench team worked in silence, their movements sharper, their feet steady. They knew now that working with the planet, not against it, was the only way. By the time the dark clouds reached them, the camp had changed shape again. Supplies were moved, barriers were built, drainage lines stretched in new directions. The fires were covered with protective domes made from ship panels. Rain began again, light at first. The aliens stood firm. No one screamed, no one ran. Caleb stood by the trench with his shovel. The water flowed into the ditch, then away toward the slope. It worked perfectly. The storm picked up speed, throwing wind and harder rain, but the camp didn't flood. The shelters held. The aliens stayed dry inside one of the main shelters. Lyrics opened her report log. "Day 5, she said, recording her voice. "Storm arrived again. No damage. Water redirected. Team calm. Trust in the human high." Outside, Zalrin worked, with 2 others to move mud blocking a drain. He shouted over the wind, "Clear the path. This section's slowing." They fixed it in minutes. Caleb passed them on his way to check the platform. Lyrics followed, her boots no longer slipping. "It's strange," she said. "We've walked on metal moons, studied black holes, but this simple act of surviving rain, it taught us more than any lab ever has. Because out here, Caleb said, the universe doesn't care about your degrees. It cares if you can dig, if you can listen to the ground, and if you help the person next to you. As the storm continued, the camp held strong. Hours passed. Then, as the sun began to set, the rain faded. The wind slowed. Clouds moved on. The aliens stepped out of their shelters and looked around. Nothing had broken. Nothing had flooded. Even the fire pit was still warm. They had won this time not by luck, but by learning. Xal Ren walked over too. Caleb, covered in mud but smiling, "You made us do something we never thought we'd do." "What's that?" "Respect the dirt." Caleb laughed. "It's always been your friend. You just never gave it a chance." The aliens gathered around. The fire once more. The sky above showed stars breaking through clouds. The night air was cool, not cold. Peaceful. "We were arrogant," Lyric said aloud. "We thought knowledge came only from machines. But you, Caleb, taught us that knowledge also lives in hands, in instincts, in sweat." The group nodded. Caleb looked at them all. "You did the work." "I just gave you a reason," the fire crackled. And for the first time since their mission began, the Rylans felt not like visitors to this planet, but like part of it. The night after the second storm was peaceful. Stars covered the sky, and the air smelled fresh. Soft wind moved through the tall grass around the camp. The water in the trenches still flowed, but slower now. The danger had passed. Inside the main shelter, the Rylans gathered for a report call to their homeworld. Lyric stood near a holoscreen. Her face looked calm, but her voice was firm. The storm lasted 8 hours. No lives were lost. Was minimal. We held position thanks to human knowledge of terrain survival. On the screen, the face of a High Council member blinked slowly, and this knowledge came from one human. Lyrics nodded. "Yes. His name is Caleb. We did not value his presence at first. That was our mistake." Zalrin stepped forward. "We believed technology made us strong. We forgot that the universe does not respect pride. It respects preparation." The council listened. They looked surprised, but said nothing. "We request permission to extend our mission," Lyrics added. "We want to learn more about this world and about the human ways of survival." The council agreed, ending the call outside. Caleb was walking along the trench again. He never stayed still. Even now, when everything was safe, he checked the corners, adjusted the barriers, and made small improvements. He believed that nature didn't stop working, so he shouldn't either. Lyrix joined him. "They approved our extension," she said. "Good. That means more time to teach you what school never will." "Like digging, like listening," Caleb said with a small smile. "The ground tells you things if you pay attention. Feel where it's soft. Smell the air before a storm. Notice how birds fly." She nodded. "We thought we knew everything. Now we know better." Caleb leaned on his shovel. It's the beginning of real wisdom. The next few days were dry and warm. Camp used this time to practice. Caleb created training tasks, building mini trenches, setting up emergency shelters, finding safe paths through muddy land. The Rylans followed eagerly. They asked questions, took notes, and even competed to see who could finish tasks faster. Xal Ren led a group in testing different soil types. They discovered that mixing crushed rocks with mud made stronger barriers. Lyrics helped design a new drainage system using curved ship panels. They shaped the flow of water with skill and care. Caleb watched proudly, but didn't say much. He just worked beside them, shoulder to shoulder. One afternoon, while resting near the edge of the slope, Lyrics sat beside Caleb and looked out over the field. "What made you become a survival expert?" she asked. "I grew up in the mountains," Caleb replied. "Storms, snow, floods, ... I saw it all. Some people run from nature. I wanted to understand it." "You never wanted a job in a big city." "I did once, but then a flood hit my hometown. No one knew what to do. I helped dig paths to stop the water. That's when I realized knowing how to survive matters more than anything else." Lyrics listened closely. "We don't teach these things in our schools." "Maybe we should. You should," Caleb said. Space is full of surprises. Some of them don't care about science or machines. They just test if you can survive. As they spoke, 2 Rylans ran up. Caleb, something's happening near the North Trench. He stood up fast and followed. At the far edge, they found a large crack forming in the ground. Water from underground had shifted the earth, breaking part of the trench wall. Caleb crouched down and touched the dirt. We need to fix this fast. Bring support panels and start digging here, he said, pointing to one side. XAL Ren arrived with others. We'll handle it. No, Caleb said. You'll lead it. I'll follow. Zalren blinked, surprised. Then he nodded. Under his orders, the group reinforced the trench with heavy plates, packed the walls, and rerouted the weak section. The crack was sealed in less than an hour. Caleb stood back and clapped his hands once. Call teamwork. The aliens smiled proudly. That night the fire was bright and spirits were high. They sat together, sharing food and telling stories. Even Caleb laughed, a sound they hadn't heard much before. Lyrix watched him carefully. You don't talk about your planet much. Earth's not perfect, he said, but it made people tough. Not because they wanted to be, but because they had to be. And that toughness saved us. No, he said softly. You saved yourselves. I just showed you where to dig. Zalren raised his glass. To the man with the shovel, everyone joined him. To the human who taught us to listen to the ground. Caleb raised his glass too, smiling quietly. They were no longer just a science crew with a human guide. They were a team bonded by storm, by sweat, and by the trench that saved their lives. A week passed after the second storm, and the weather remained calm. The sky above Hellerini was bright, and the once muddy field around the Rillan camp had turned solid and green again. Birds nested in trees nearby. Strange little creatures peeked out from the grass, curious but not afraid. The camp had grown into something strong. The trenches were now permanent. New ones had been added. Barriers were reinforced with stones and clay. Shelters stood higher and were stronger. The Rylans had not just survived, they had adapted. Caleb stood near the edge of the camp, watching the water flow smoothly through the trench system. Lyrix walked up beside him, holding a small scanner in her hand. You've changed us, she said softly. You changed yourselves, Caleb answered. I just gave you a push. You gave us a reason to learn. He turned to her. And now you'll teach others. She nodded. I've sent all your lessons back home.
There.
Starting new survival courses based on what we've learned here. Caleb smiled. Good. Not every battle is won with lasers and science. Sometimes it's won with mud and sweat. A loud sound came from above. The Rylan ship hovered low, preparing for final pickup. Their extended mission was over. Council had ordered their return, not before they gave Caleb something he didn't expect. As the ship landed, Zalren and the others gathered around. They carried a smooth black stone with a symbol carved into it. They handed it to Caleb. What's this? He asked. XAL Ren placed a hand on his shoulder. A mark of honor in our culture. It's given to those who teach us something we never understood before. Lyrix stepped forward. This stone is shaped like the trench you dug, the one that saved us. Call it the path of life now. Caleb held it carefully. It received medals before back on Earth. But this simple stone meant more. Thank you, he said quietly. As the crew packed the final crates, Caleb helped them without being asked. Even after everything, he still didn't act like a hero. He lifted gear, rolled cables, and folded tents. When it was time to leave, Lyrix turned to him. Are you sure you won't come with us? She asked. The council has offered you a place. We need survival teachers. Caleb looked out at the land. The sun was setting. An orange light covered the field. Small drops of water sparkled along the trenches like tiny stars. I belong out here, he said. This planet still has more to teach me. Lyrix looked disappointed but understood. Maybe we'll meet again, she said. Maybe, he replied, then handed her a small folded map. This shows where I built a second shelter, far north. If you return, Look for it. I'll leave signs. Zaurin shook his hand. You're more than a guide, Caleb. You're a friend of our people now, and you're stronger than you think. The ship's doors closed, and the engines lit up. One by one, the Rylands gave final waves through the windows. Lyrics pressed her hand to the glass. The ship rose into the air, slow and steady, then disappeared into the clouds. Caleb stood alone now, but not lonely. He turned and walked back into the camp. He checked the fire pit, covered it with dry grass. He checked the trenches again, making sure the water still flowed. Then he sat on a flat rock and pulled out a notebook. On the first page he wrote, Day 1 after they left. Camp still strong. No signs of new storms. The planet feels calm. For now. He paused and smiled. Then he added, I never thought I'd be proud of digging a hole. But that trench became something bigger. It saved lives. And maybe it saved a bit of me too. He closed the notebook and watched the stars come out. The wind whispered across the grass like it was telling a secret. In Caleb, the human who once stood alone in the storm now felt like a part of something greater, like the land had accepted him. Not as a visitor, not as a hero, but as one of its own.